All right, let's get right into it. We're going to break down the teaching methodology at the IELTS Focus and really look at what makes it tick.
So, here's how we're going to break it all down. It's basically a three-part system. First, we'll talk about the goal, academic English. Then, we'll get into the method, thinking about language in chunks. And finally, we'll look at the process, which is all about learning by doing. You'll see how all these pieces fit together perfectly.
Okay, first up, the goal. Look, this is about so much more than just passing a test. The real endgame here is to get you ready for the actual academic world, so you can not just survive, but really thrive in that environment.
Now, it's super important to understand this difference, right? On one side, you've got your regular, everyday, general English. You know, what you use to chat with friends. But on the other side, that's English for academic purposes, or EAP. And trust me, it's a completely different ballgame. We're talking about the language of lectures, of research, of formal arguments. It's a whole other skill set.
You can think of EAP as like a specialized toolkit just for university. It's not just about learning vocabulary. Not at all. It's about learning how to use that vocabulary to do very specific things, like break down a dense academic article, build a solid argument in an essay, or hold your own in a classroom debate.
And here's what's actually in that toolkit. These are the skills you'll actually use day in and day out. Things like, how do you listen to a professor who talks a mile a minute and still take good notes? How do you write an essay that's actually persuasive? It even covers stuff like citing sources correctly so you don't get into trouble with plagiarism. This is the practical nitty-gritty stuff you absolutely need.
All right, pillar number 2. So if EAP is what we're aiming for, the lexical approach is how we get you there. It's all about building fluency in a really, really smart way. This quote from Michael Lewis, it's huge. It basically turns the old way of thinking about language on its head. The idea is this. Fluent speakers aren't sitting there building sentences from scratch with grammar rules and single words. No way. Our brains are packed with these, pre-made phrases, these chunks that we just grab and use. And once you get that, it changes everything.
So what is a lexical chunk? Well, it's just a group of words that always seem to hang out together. Seriously, think about it. When you say, how are you? You're not thinking, how are you? You're just saying the whole block. Same with phrases like on the other hand or long story short. We teach these chunks because that's how people actually talk. It's the secret to sounding natural. And this right here, this is the key. Real fluency doesn't come from memorizing a ton of grammar rules. It comes from having this huge mental library of chunks that you can pull from instantly. It's kind of like, instead of building a house one tiny brick at a time, you have whole walls and sections ready to just snap into place. It's faster, it's smoother, and it lets you get your ideas out without getting stuck translating in your head. Okay, on to the third and final piece. So how do we actually do all this in a classroom? This is where it all comes together. And it's all about learning by doing.
The whole process is built around something called the task-based learning cycle. It's got 3 steps. First, the pre-task. The teacher sets everything up, gives you context, maybe some useful phrases, then bam, you're in the task cycle. You're working with others, focused on solving a problem, on achieving a goal, and after you've done that, you get to the language focus stage. That's where you step back and look at the language you used, what worked, what didn't. It's a really natural cycle of do, then review. The philosophy behind this is simple but kind of radical. Meaning first, form second. Instead of learning a grammar rule and then trying to figure out how to use it, you focus on completing a task. This creates a genuine need to communicate, and you naturally reach for the right language to do it. The grammar becomes a tool you need, not just some abstract rule you have to memorize.
So, when we say task, we're not talking about a boring old worksheet, okay? A task is a real activity with a real outcome. You're trying to solve a puzzle, or plan an event, or make a tough decision. Your brain is totally focused on the goal, not on, oh, am I using this grammar point correctly? And isn't that exactly how we use language in the real world? We use it to get stuff done.
And just to give you a feel for it, here's a classic example. Imagine this. You're part of a medical team. You've got 1 heart for a transplant, but 3 patients who desperately need it. Your team has to talk it out, argue your points, and come to one single decision together. I mean, talk about high stakes. This kind of task forces you to use language to persuade, to negotiate, to justify, all for a very real, very compelling purpose.
So let's just pull this all together. It's a complete system, right? The goal is to get you ready for real academic life with EAP. The method is to build your fluency using language chunks, and the process is to make you learn by doing meaningful tasks. You see how it all connects? It just makes sense.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. If language is really a tool for doing things and not just for studying rules, what's the first thing you would want to do with it? If you could learn by tackling any challenge you wanted, what task would you pick first?